Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Friday morning. Lovely to see you. Hope you're well and cheerful, and thank you for being with us as we continue our adventure through the remarkable book of Exodus. And what an adventure it is. Today we're in chapter 8. So without further ado, Exodus chapter 8, here goes. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go so they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs. The river shall swarm with frogs, and shall come up into your palace, into your bedchamber and your bed, and the houses of your officials and of your people, and into your ovens and your kneading bowls. The frogs shall come up on you and on your people and your officials.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the waters and the canals and the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt.' So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts, and brought frogs up on the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, 'Pray to the Lord to take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let my people go to sacrifice to the Lord.' Moses said to Pharaoh, 'Kindly tell me when I am to pray for you and your officials and for your people, that the frogs may be removed from you and your houses, and be left only in the Nile.' And he said, 'Tomorrow.' Moses said, 'As you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs shall leave you and your houses and your officials and your people, and shall be left only in the Nile.' Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried to the Lord concerning the frogs that had been brought upon Pharaoh. And the Lord did as Moses requested. The frogs died in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields, and they gathered together in heaps, and the land stank. And while Pharaoh saw this, there was a respite. He hardened his heart and would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. And the Lord said to Moses, 'Say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, so it may become gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt.' And they did so. Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and the gnats came on humans and animals alike. All the dust of the earth turned into gnats throughout the whole land of Egypt. The magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, but they could not. There were gnats on both humans and animals. And the magicians said to Pharaoh, 'This is the finger of God.' But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. And the Lord said to Moses, 'Rise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh as he goes out to the water, and say to him, "Thus says the Lord, let my people go, so they may worship me. For if you will not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you, your officials and your people, and into your houses and the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, so also the land where they live. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people live, so no swarms of flies shall be there. You may know that I, the Lord, am in this land. Thus I'll make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign shall appear tomorrow.' The Lord did so, and great swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh and his Egyptian officials' houses. In all of Egypt the land was ruined because of the flies. And Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, 'Go sacrifice to your God within the land.' But Moses said, 'It wouldn't be right to do so, for the sacrifices that we offer to the Lord our God are offensive to the Egyptians. If we offer in the sight of the Egyptians sacrifices that are offensive to them, will they not stone us? We must go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice the Lord our God as he commands us.' So Pharaoh said, 'I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, provided you do not go very far away. Pray for me.' Then Moses said, 'As soon as I leave, I will pray to the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh and his officials and from his people. Only do not let Pharaoh again deal falsely by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord.' So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord. And the Lord did as Moses asked. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his officials and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also and would not let the people go." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so the people of Israel are enslaved in Egypt really badly by an angry Pharaoh. And then God says through Moses to him, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh refuses stubbornly. And with that in mind, God, through the work of Moses, sends a whole series of plagues. And that's what we're in the series of at the moment. And there are 10 of them in all. Yesterday we had the first one, which was the plague when the Nile turned to blood. Today we have the plagues of frogs, smelly frogs, gnats and flies. It's not kind of Good breakfast thought, is it really? But there we go. That's what happened. And it's quite interesting, really, because there are 10 plagues in all, and they are laid out really in groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, as you find out is different. So yesterday was number 1, and today we had frogs and gnats and flies. But they're laid out in 3. So really and truly, 1, 2, and 3 are a group, which is the blood, the frogs, and the gnats. And it's today's the flies and the 2 tomorrow and so on. So they're laid out in groups of 3. You know this because in each group of 3, in the first one, Pharaoh is given a warning, and he's not in the second. Beg your pardon. Pharaoh is warned in the first and second, but not warned in the third. The time in which he's to go is to Moses to meet Pharaoh is given in the first one, but not the second one and the third one. And also in the first one each time, Moses is told to station himself. In the second one each time, Moses is told to go to Pharaoh. And in the third one, he's not given any instructions. So you can see they're kind of poetically laid out in groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 3 groups. And as you see also, you've got them laid out like that, with the 10th being different, the 10th being the harshest of all, as we'll discover in a couple of days' time. You also notice that the plagues they all mean something, and they also tend to get more severe as you go, as this happens through. So I've laid out so far that you've got the groups of 3 with the 10th separately, but also let's just say a little bit about the particular ones in which we have to. We have the second plague, which is frogs. Okay, notice this is really essentially this is a health risk. I mean, people get cute about little froggies, but actually this will have been revolting. And this plague is a health. It's a kind of risk here to human health. It's also worth pointing out that the Egyptian god of childbirth was a god called Heket. Which is the god of childbirth. And then it says, by having control over this, God is showing God's power over Egyptian gods, by name in particular, the god of childbirth. So you can kind of see through this frog plague was a plague against human health, showing God's power over sickness, but it was also demonstrating that God has power over an Egyptian god in the terms of in the form of the Egyptian god of childbirth, which is always depicted in Egyptian mythology as a frog. And the second one you've got this morning is the plague of gnats. And it's interesting here also that what God does is God turns the dust into gnats. Well, it's quite interesting because dust is often considered in the Bible a sign of sort of life and death, because it's from dust you came and to dust you shall return. So notice here that God is showing his power over, if you like, over life and death. By turning the dust into the gnats. Also, with the plague of gnats, this is the first time that the Egyptian magicians were not able to replicate what Moses and Aaron had done through the power of God. So with the blood and the frogs, the magicians were able to conjure that one up somehow. But with this one, the plague of gnats, they weren't able to. So again, God is showing that his power through Moses and Aaron is stronger than the power of the Egyptian magicians. There is also, however, an interesting phrase in here which they use when they talk about this is the finger of God. Now, it's an interesting phrase to use because that's also the phrase used in Luke chapter 11, verse 20 in the New Testament, when Jesus is challenged by the Pharisees and so on about whose power he's doing these things. Because by casting out demons, they accuse him of using the power of Satan to do this. And Jesus says, no, but if it's by the finger of God that I do these things, then you can see. So what, in a sense, what Jesus is doing in chapter 11 of Luke is he's likening himself to the power of God with Moses, but he's also likening the other exorcists later on. He's likening them to the Egyptian magicians as well. So you see, there's a parallel here between what God does here in Exodus with the finger of God, and what Jesus using the finger of God in the New Testament as well. So you can see the connection there. So that's the second one. And the third plague we're looking at this morning is the plague of flies, which is the first time actually that there's a plague on the land. So far we've had the health and so on. We've had life and death and so on. This is the first time that the land is done. I think the other thing with the plague of flies is this is the first time here that you see very clearly God being careful and purposeful about the way he does it. It's the first time that you see that God differentiates between the Egyptian people and the Israelite people, that the plague goes in one place and not the other. Notice also that God turns it off, so to speak, very quickly at the end, thus demonstrating that this is not sort of freak of nature or some accident or something. This is God at work in this. So God is showing that God is not only powerful, but he's also discerning and careful in the way that he administers these plagues as well. So notice here that you have in this story, this few chapters all about the plagues. You have the 10 plagues laid out: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're poetically and carefully laid out. Okay. You notice also that with the frogs that you have at the plague on human health, you also have power over an Egyptian god, Heket, god of childbirth. With the gnats, notice that it's turning the dust into the gnats. There's this connection with dust to dust and so on. And that this thing about the finger of God, which is Jesus uses about himself a few hundred years later. And this is the first time with us with the gnats that the magicians aren't able to replicate it as well. And then with the third one we look at this morning, the flies, it's the plague of the land. But notice how careful God is in what God is doing. This is not indiscriminate. This is the time when God is careful about what he does and what he's dishing out. Because the purpose is not to be mean. The purpose, of course, is to get Pharaoh to change his mind. And sometimes in these plagues, Pharaoh nearly does. But at the last minute, he comes back. But at the end of the day, God's call to him is clear. Let my people go. Friends, I hope that's helpful. Do have a lovely weekend. There'll be more again on Monday. I hope you have a lovely weekend. God bless you. Thank you for watching. Do please share the message with your friends and enjoy the love of God over this week. And God bless you. Thanks for watching. And